America is a Christian nation. Act like it. If you don't like that, you can leave. This is a holy war for the soul of our country. These three quotes are direct quotes, actually, from Stephen Miller, Russ, Vought, and Pete Hegseth. And these are not clips from sermons that they gave. These are campaign speeches, really dressed up in kind of a religious garb. This is the language of Christian nationalism. And to be clear, this isn't a kind of church movement, something that's benign, that just sounds kind of religious, but doesn't really mean anything. This is actually a political machine. Organizations like the Heritage Foundation and Turning Point USA have made Christian nationalism an active force working within our current political system to actually force one very narrow, very specific kind of Christianity upon all of us, to kind of create, broadly speaking, a theocracy. So in this episode, we are going to tell you what Christian nationalism is, the lies that they're using to spread it, particularly the ways in which people like Miller, Hegseth, and Vought, how they are using these lies to manipulate people to gain power in their respective posts. And we will end by talking about, well, probably going to have it throughout, why everybody should be genuinely concerned about what Christian nationalists are doing to our country. Greetings and welcome to the Progressive Christians podcast. We are the love your neighbor kind of Christians, and not the kind who use AI to create videos where we take a literal dump on those who disagree with us. So if you're curious about a socially and politically progressive Christianity, this is the podcast for you. My name is Reverend Dr. Christopher Carter, and I am joined today by Julia. How are you doing?
I love hearing I love the new, we're the love your neighbor kind of Christians, not the ellipses, whatever, fill in the blank. I love it. And I don't like to read it before we do it because I like to be surprised. It's my new little game with myself.
It is fun. And there's always material to pull from because
oh my gosh, so much material.
Crazy in these streets.
Never
I
stops.
was like, and so Wesley was there in church last Sunday where I was like there. So Wesley, what happened was I sent him 3 videos and I had them play one. I'm gonna use another one next week. And so one of them, I was like, should I show them this video of President Trump flying a fighter jet, literally dumping poop, like dumping poop on people
on his constituents,
on the No King? Yeah, I'm like,
on
him like overlaid on the video.
The people that he swore on a Bible to protect.
And I think this is honestly, the whole point of this episode is to talk about Christian nationalism and how it's divisive. And what they argue and what they've been able to do using the language of Christian nationalism is to deploy police, deploy ICE to what they call blue cities, quote unquote, to do harm. And the way they rationalize it is these people are evil. They are literally saying, it's like these are the good Christians who vote the right way, and these are the bad non-Christians. So so they don't even really count. It creates the logical moral framework for people not to get upset when they see this, right? And I think the thing that makes me so angry is just the double speak. How, I know, say if we're blessed enough where the next president's a Democrat, if they do anything like this, all they're gonna do is be like, "Oh my gosh, this is so rude. This is so," like, or they talk about Gavin Newsom, and it's so like, it's so disingenuous. And I'm like, why don't they call each other out on this? Like, why don't they care that they're like, I don't know. Anyway, sorry,
Gavin Newsom, the way that he has been trolling, but the way that they've been responding to it. How long has it been? 6 months? How long is it? When did he start doing this?
It's been probably about maybe 3 months.
Earlier this year.
Yeah.
The way that they respond to it, where they're genuinely and sincerely horrified, and like, it's.
I mean, I don't know that they're genuinely or sincerely horrified. I think it is a game to them. It is about maintaining power. They understand that they need to be inflammatory whenever a Democrat does anything, irrespective of what it is. Even if it's just holding up a mirror to them, it's like, it's just the game they play. There's no sincerity behind it.
To see them sit there and be like, this is unbecoming.
Clutching their pearls.
Unacceptable for a leader to engage with anyone in this. It's like, what What? It's
No,
one
it
of the
does.
Hardest things.
It
There's a
is.
lot of hard things right now, but for me, that's like one of the hardest. That breaks my brain.
Yeah, no, it definitely is one of the things that causes me inner struggle when it's the lying. And I know we've done episode. I think we have an episode called "They Like the Lying," and I fundamentally can't wrap my brain around it. So again, today's episode we're going to be talking about Christian nationalism. Specifically, we could call it white Christian nationalism. We'll talk more about why the white is silent, if you will. When you talk about Christian nationalism, it's like I'm teaching Isaiah how to spell. I'm like, oh, it's just, man, English is so stupid. There's so many silent letters. But anyway, before we get into that, I want to talk about a critique that has come up on a few of our last episodes. And one was on purity culture, and the one we just did around the myths of progressive Christianity. We had a few people on Spotify at a colleague email to basically say they felt like we were generalizing evangelicals and conservatives, and we weren't like they felt like we were using straw man arguments, right? So I guess I want to say 2 points I want to make here. One is that, as we said, we don't speak for all progressives when we on this podcast. This is the Progressive Christians podcast. I use Christians as a plural to be like, hey, there's a plurality of way people express progressive Christianity. I think you're getting a good general perspective on here. I think most progressives would agree with us, but we're not claiming to speak for all of them. Similarly, when we're critiquing conservatives and evangelicals and MAGA Christians, which I think are probably three, there's overlapping beliefs, but they're probably somewhat different in some ways. We can't be claiming to speak against or critiquing every aspect, every part of what they do, because that's just not practical, right? Like, it's just, we are critiquing it from our own experience, from our own reading, our own research, from articles that we literally put in the show notes. Like, we're giving you receipts, right? And so these critiques are informed by our experience. The second point I want to make, and then Wesley, Julie, I want to turn it over to y'all because I know y'all had thoughts about this as well, is that the challenge with this that comes up is, it's what I call, when I would teach about race in undergrad and grad school, where my white students would say, well, not all white people. I'd be like, well, this is how racism works, but not all white people are racist. Well, not all white people own slaves. And they would get into these nuances. And the problem with the not all, quote unquote, fill in the blank, is that it doesn't take systems into account. And so if we're talking about evangelicalism, if we're talking about conservative politics, if we're talking about MAGA Christianity, we're talking about the systems that have been put in place that's created a certain kind of person. Now, while your church community may not entirely practice the full scope of all some of those negative things, there's parts of it that it probably practices and parts of it that it don't, and also parts that influence and shape the way your community of friends, your church organization actually governs itself. Just because it doesn't exist in your congregation doesn't mean it doesn't exist at all, or it doesn't mean it's not even the norm, right? Outside of your region. Julia, Wesley, because I've been talking too much. I've already been talking too much. What do y'all got to say?
The critiques that I have about evangelicalism, American evangelicals, isn't just from reading, isn't just some sort of like watching documentaries. It's lived experience. I was in Iowa. I went to a Christian university. I was in evangelical churches. So it's not as if I'm not speaking from actual experience with actual where I could point to specific examples of this reality. It's also like, just because you're in a space that you feel isn't, let me talk about purity culture specifically. Just because you think that your church isn't practicing purity culture in the way that is detrimental to other people doesn't mean that it isn't still detrimental. Your personal experience of purity culture may have been light, or if you're a man, it was different than if you were a woman. But these stories, the reason we push back against these things is because there's mountains of evidence and testimonials about the harms that these things have caused, and so it's coming from a real place. We may speak in sometimes generally about some of the harms of conservative Christianity, but we could speak specifically about the harms of conservative Christianity. It's gonna make it less
palatable.
Well, yeah, because the harms are real, and we have to get it. If we're gonna talk about individual people's stories, that makes it harder to like keep it less, keep it light, even as awful as purity culture is. If we get specific, it no longer is as approachable. We'd probably have to think about, content warnings, because this is how deep these things get.
That's what I was gonna say. We'd have to change the content because some of the stuff is terrible. We'd have to literally change the content warning on this. Julia?
When we make these generalizations, obviously we don't mean 100% of everything all the time. It is kind of one of those things where all crows are ravens, but not all ravens are crows. Like, from what I see, and if someone wants to show me the ways that more progressive types of faith and Christianity are equally as harmful, I'm more than willing. I would love to hear about it, how your like progressive experiences in religion have harmed you. And I'm not saying that doesn't exist. Like, Everest makes a lot of really good, like, we all have, like, listen, I'm not saying that doesn't, but also when we're talking on this spectrum of like conservative, ultra conservative, like MAGA conservative, it does seem like more harm is done the further right that you move. And that's not to say that all the harm is only being done there. That's not to say that everyone there is being harmed in this. It's just to say, it's like to point out and to call it out, because I genuinely don't know how else we can heal and move forward if it's not spoken about. And I think a lot of times people attach judgments to things where there don't need to be. Maybe you can say like, oh, I did carry those beliefs and maybe those were harmful to other people. That's not necessarily a critique on you or your soul. It doesn't make you a bad person.
Yeah, I think this is where we have to recognize that if we're not talking about you, like if we critique something and you feel like, well, that doesn't apply to me, then we're not talking about you. Just don't take it personal. Like, and I think what's the hard part about whiteness, the creation of whiteness, is that it's created this idea that when we critique certain things, you're inherently taking it personal because you have lost your ethnic, cultural, communal identity. That was the point. The point of creating whiteness was to create a class of people that would gather around a particular kind of idea, an ideology, right? So that they could actually have some binding agent that could be used to suppress people of color, right? Whereas before you have these different factions, these different groups, different religions, these different ethnicities that got supplanted literally by your flesh, right? That was the point. I'm not saying anybody chose it. That's just, all of us that have been born post probably 1500s, right? No, these were not our active choices. These were pressed upon us. But that was the point, right? And so that's why you feel attacked when someone says something. But it takes internal security, education, and awareness to know that if we're critiquing something that's not about you, it's not about you. There's one person at our church that is very, very wealthy, and I asked this person, how is a man, cisgender man. I was like, how do you go here and listen to what I say and not be like, this fool? Well, because you don't have to listen to what, because I'm critiquing a lot of the stuff that in the spaces that you're in. And he's like, he's like, Dr. Carter, he's like, you're not talking about me. He's like, I don't do any of that stuff. He's like, you talk about white folks. He's like, you ain't talking about me. I don't do that. You talk about rich people. He's like, that's not how I treat my employees. And so like, he can hear it and be like, oh, okay. Yeah, there are people who like that, but I'm not like that. So I'm not going to take this personal. And it's that kind of maturity that I'm inviting you to step into. That's all I want to say, because I know this turned out to be a little bit longer than maybe I wanted to have it on there, but it's important, I think, because we do have a lot of, like, what makes me feel so proud of the work that we've been able to do is that we have a good amount of people who are moderate to conservative that listen to us. And I don't know that that's the case with people like, I'm pretty sure it's not the case. People like Allie Beth Stuckey and some of these other more conservative podcasts. Because when you listen to them, they are racist. Like, they say things that are straight up racist. Now I'm like, I can't listen to that. I'm like, I've tried to find some, like, to be like, okay, what are they doing? How can I learn from what they're doing? I'm like, no, this isn't good. Like, if you listen to it with a critical ear, I'm not racist. I have no problem with conservative people. Be conservative. But I'm asking you to not vote for policies that harm me or my family. That's all I'm asking. So I want to spend a few minutes just by telling you what Christian nationalism is. So for those of you who don't know, Christian nationalism is a political framework. It's not really theological, even though it really tries hard to convince people that it's theological. In this way, the movement is like extremely clever in its marketing. It uses crosses, Bible verses, it uses religious language to lull you into the belief that it is really religious, like any other kind of religious organization. But it's really about politics and using these kinds of American flags and campaign slogans to really get you to bypass your critical thinking and to really get you to trust them. It's designed to create an emotional connection, right? To get you to buy into the rhetoric. It creates a sense of belonging and a kind of divine entitlement and endorsement, if you will, that this is something, this belief, this way of living in the world is what God would want you to do. And this is the thing. It's like very, very insidious, because once you equate God with the political party, I mean, again, April Ajoy talked about this in the episode we did with her. Once you equate God's righteousness and rightness with a political party, once you fuse faith with a specific political agenda, then criticizing that party or that particular political agenda feels like you're criticizing God, right? That's the evil genius of their plan. Like, it's incredibly effective at silencing dissent and mobilizing followers. It's like, because it uses psychology to basically say that if you critique us, you're critiquing God, and that raises the stakes. So therefore, people don't feel like they can dissent or critique.
And it's also, I mean, one of the things that's interesting about this specific point is that I don't know where conservative Christianity had the idea that they have to defend God. This all-powerful being needs our little human defense in order for them not to crumble. It's such a weird centering of humanity in its proximity to God that we have to defend God. Weird.
That is something that I sent this in our group chat like last week, of one of the Trump sons who was like, we are saving God. We are rescuing God from the woke left. And I was like, you literally think that you are more powerful than God. How is that not blasphemy? Like, you're sitting here saying that you think that God needs you to save her from me?
Yeah. Blasphemy. Like that. And it's, I mean, that is a textbook. I mean, literal textbook definition of blasphemy. So, yeah. Another important aspect of what defines Christian nationalism, because it really is like a constellation of beliefs, is the best way to think about it. Like, there is no, like, if you're a Christian nationalist, you subscribe to all of these things. But there are a few things that kind of hold them all together. They consider the founding documents like the Declaration of Independence and the U.S. Constitution to be divinely inspired. And so in this sense, they think like the federal government should declare the U.S. as a Christian nation, that the federal government should allow the display of religious symbols, that the federal government should allow prayer in public schools. They think that the success of the country is equated to the success of God, and they don't really want to draw a distinction between the two. And the link that connects the deep story and political vision of Christian nationalism to America is whiteness, right? White Christian nationalists often use like the slogan of Christian nationalism to hide race, because the assumption of who is Christian and who, quote unquote, loves America and traditional American values is obvious to them. So in this sense, Christian nationalist becomes a dog whistle to basically talk about white people. So it's like, we don't have to say white. When we're talking about Christian nationalists, you have to identify with whiteness as an ideology. Doesn't mean you have to be white, but you got to agree with the white hierarchical power structure and your own place within it, even if you're a person of color, but you want to uphold that value, right? So again, the white in Christian nationalism is silent.
It's implied. So I think it's important, because I've had this argument with people, and I actually saw someone posted a video, and the founding fathers were all Christian. No, they weren't. But and someone said, show me where Christianity is mentioned in any of the founding documents. And someone literally said, right here, he used the date, the year of our Lord, 17, whatever it was.
Wow.
And was like, there you have it, friends. I think it's important for people to understand, and I'm not trying to be condescending, Christians aren't the only people that worship a God.
No.
You guys are being, see, this is what I was trying not to do. No, I don't know that people know this. Now I don't know that people know this. other religions refer to their deity, whatever, whomever, however. In Islam, people worship God.
Yeah. No,
in Judaism, people worship God. That is not what Christianity is. Christianity isn't about God. When we say that Christianity isn't mentioned in any of the founding documents of the country, it's because Jesus Christ is what would indicate Christianity being mentioned. But there is no mention of that because it's not a Christian nation.
See,
God is not. It's
God,
not.
you're saying God isn't Christian? Is that what you're saying, Julia? God isn't Christian?
That is kind of what I'm saying. Am I going to get in trouble for that too?
Maybe.
I don't know. The last thing I want to talk about with respect to Christian nationalism before we get, and this actually leads into the conversations around Stephen Miller, Russ Vought, and Pete Hegseth, is the way in which they think about these three, what we have referred to before as an unholy trinity of freedom, order, and violence. For Christian nationalists, freedom is understood in a libertarian way, meaning freedom from restrictions and especially freedom from government. So this is how they can recognize and argue that defunding things, even though you talk about defunding the police, they're like, oh, don't do that, but they can defund everything else. They can see this as a Christian, something that's in alignment with Christianity. So an unholy trinity of freedom from things and order is understood in a hierarchical way, meaning like order is set up where white Christian men are on top and everybody falls underneath. This is why we talk about patriarchy. And then violence. Violence for white Christian nationalists is seen as a righteous means of defending freedom and restoring order. However, the means for defending freedom and restoring order are reserved for white Christian men or people who want to uphold the freedom and order of white Christian men. So the only way they are able to maintain this unholy trinity of freedom, order, and violence is through the use of violence. Government, state sanctioned violence, either actual military violence or the violence of taking things away from people, is how they are able to maintain their power. Right. And what I mean by deep story, I should say before I turn it over to y'all and then we get into a deeper, longer conversation. Deep stories are stories that are more myth than truth. They follow a particular pattern where you have characters that are well worn, people who are good, people who are allegedly evil. And it's deep because it's been told for a long time. And it's become basically more myth than fact. Like we talk about the founding of the nation as a Christian nation. And it's a story because it has those familiar plots. So you think you kind of know how it's supposed to go. And so they're able to use the deep story of Manifest Destiny, the deep story of the conquest narratives in Judges or Joshua, I should say, to argue for the use of the unholy trinity of freedom, order, and violence, in particular the use of violence as a Christian practice, right, to uphold freedom and order. And again, even though we would say, for the way we talk about Christian, they're not using the teachings of Christ to talk about freedom and order or violence. They're using text from the Hebrew Bible and misusing text from Paul. So now that we've set that framework, let's pause and pivot to probably one of the shadow presidents. I think we got two shadow presidents right now.
Can I really quickly add one more thing? Ahead. I think that the umbrella of authority is important. So these people believe that there are different umbrellas and umbrellas to protect you from, I don't know what we're being protected. But the point is that like God has the ultimate umbrella, and then directly under God are white men, and then under that are white women. Under that are white children, and everyone else is under all of it. But I think that that's important because these men that we're about to discuss see themselves as God's representatives on earth, and that it is their job to like subjugate all of creation, and that is his will. Their will is his will. Their wills are intertwined. That's all. I think that's important.
I mean, it is, they believe themselves to be gods, quite honestly.
That's so, yeah. No, thank you.
Just see Wesley's face. For those of you listening on Spotify and iTunes, you gotta see his face. He's just like, I'm out. That's ridiculous.
His favorite part.
Stephen Miller. Crazy person. Stephen 100%. Miller is not a white Christian nationalist because technically Stephen Miller is Jewish. But he is a white nationalist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, we're going to put links in our show notes to all three of these people we're going to talk about. There's a link to a Facebook post we're going to put in that was written by his cousin. And it's because I want to add context to this. Like these people are human beings and they come from families, and what their decisions are hurting people. We have something we're going to read from Pete Hegseth. But that talks about how it's hurting people in their own family. These people don't even care. Like they don't care about that they're hurting their families. Like Russ Vought is literally doing stuff to hurt his own child. But Wesley, let's talk about Steve. Let's talk about crazy
Santa
Monica
Miller native.
Santa Monica native.
He's from Santa Monica. He's from our neck of the woods.
One of our very own. Boo. Yeah, I mean, I guess most people know Stephen Miller currently serves, I think, as the deputy chief of staff for the Trump administration. The fact that he is Jewish and is propagating so much, or at least is so aligned with people who are advocating for this sort of like authoritarian Christian takeover is crazy. Francesca Ransby has this every time someone does something that bites their nose, spites their whatever that
what
phrase
does she
is.
call it? That she's like the leopard.
Yeah, she sings a song like "You never thought the leopards were going to eat your face" or something to that effect.
Oh, it's so good.
It's
so
like
good.
There's a lack of foresight for what is coming when you align yourself with such a strict view of who should hold power. And Stephen Miller is in the space where he is aligned with these people,
assuming that his whiteness will protect him.
And it'll protect him for a while, I'm sure.
It'll protect him longer than it'll protect us.
True.
He'll outlast us.
True. I think we read like a handful of articles about Stephen Miller and his trajectory through conservative establishments and his connection with so many organizations. I mean, I was surprised to learn that he worked for racist Jeff Sessions, like from Alabama. I was just like, oh,
Jeffrey Beauregard Sessions. Remember him?
I was like, how? Anyway, it's wild the degree to which Stephen Miller has ingratiated himself in these circles and really found, for lack of a better word, success within that movement. But I think the thing that frustrates me to no end is just how there's so much dehumanizing happening in his rhetoric, in the ways that he's bringing out policy. He is credited as being the architect of the family separation policy under the first Trump administration, which to this day has left hundreds of children without parents. Put yourself in the space of a child, not knowing potentially the language when coming to this country, and then being separated from your parents, and then never seeing your parents again. And on the other side, the parents who were trying to do something good for their children will probably never see their kids again. And it's just these two people groups lost in the chaos, the intentional chaos of Stephen Miller's ideas. One of the articles talked about how in 2023, Miller's legal group, America First Legal, filed a complaint against Kellogg for politicizing and sexualizing its products simply for releasing a Pride-themed Pop-Tarts box and featuring RuPaul's image on Cheez-Its. And what is clear to me is that Stephen Miller does not see others as fully human on purpose. And everything that he's doing flows from that reality. There was another quote, and I'll read this, is from an article from the Southern Poverty Law Center. In response to seeing photos of children being separated from their parents at the U.S. border with Mexico as a result of the zero tolerance policy, an external White House advisor in a Vanity Fair report said Stephen actually enjoys seeing those pictures at the border. There's a lack of humanity.
He's sick.
And I don't know what we do with people who intentionally refuse to see the humanity in others, and that these people are given so much power to create harm under the guise of Christianity and saving us from immigrants. It's disconcerting is the wrong word. It's absolutely infuriating.
Carter, you're an ethicist. What
ground us, please?
Oh God.
What is this? Like, what is a person who gets joy from seeing children being harmed? Like, what is that?
There is a which I'm about to put the name of the book in the show notes now. There's a book by Peter Baynard, I think is his name, Being Jewish After Gaza. And in that book, he says that genocide starts in the mind. And I was just like, wow. Like, basically, you have to buy into the logics of dehumanization from the beginning to then rationalize what you see happening to these communities. And I think what Stephen Miller has done is internalized a framework where he sees people as less than him and as therefore not deserving the kind of compassion he might give to some people. The problem is, as Howard Thurman writes in Jesus and Disinherited, is that hate is all consuming. You can't just start out hating Mexicans and Black people. Ultimately, you end up hating yourself. Like, that's what hate does. Like, that's what, and I think this is how you can see someone like Stephen Miller advocating for policies that are deeply anti-Semitic and not really thinking critically about it because you think he's protected because he's, right now, he gets to be white. But as we just said, whiteness is a construct. Jews have not always been white. And as soon as they meaning
run
white,
out of brown people,
you're the
Black
next.
people.
You're the next. You're the next. Then you're not white anymore. And I'm like, there's a history of this, right? This is not, I'm not telling y'all anything that hasn't happened in the past, right? And so that's the frustrating part about people like Stephen Miller. He said a couple of things at Charlie Kirk's funeral that I wanted to capture. And I wish, and maybe I could put a link to it because it was terrible.
Didn't he like rip a speech from a Nazi? Like, didn't he?
Well, yeah. So that's the other thing we got to put on here. These people, like, it's like the Young Republicans chat. Like, they are Nazi identified. I'll just say that because now I know they're watching everything that we're doing and they're scraping our data. They're Nazi identified. They are in alignment with Nazi teachings, and that's just the truth, right? And so this is why people that Trump keeps getting, that he keeps nominating for these positions, get like not getting through the process, is because they are too Nazi. And even they're so Nazi they can't even make it through this Congress. In his in the thing at Charlie Kirk's funeral, he said, "We are the storm, and our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, our determination, our resolve, our passion." Like he wants to basically make the argument that these people are doing God's work, as you said, Julia, in terms of the harm that they're doing. I want to read this one quote about Stephen Miller. I want to move on so we make sure we have time to kind of get to the other people. And this was from this is an SPLC. So the Southern Poverty Law Center basically they have a whole long form article on Stephen Miller, and it talks about how he's been doing this again for a long time. And this is in September of 2015. He sent an email to Breitbart. So this is a white Christian nationalist news site. And he wanted the editor to write about Jean Raspail's book, The Camp of Saints, which is a racist French novel popular among white nationalists and neo-Nazis. The novel is popular within extremist circles because of its dramatized depiction of quote-unquote white genocide, also referred to as the Great Replacement conspiracy theory. According to this theory, white people of European descent are being systematically displaced in Western world. And so this is the thing, like, that allows them to rationalize these separation policies and these racist policies, is they see it as an existential threat to whiteness. Now, you and I can look all around and see all the white people in the world and be like, if this is a white genocide, like, you know, if y'all losing, who winning? I don't know. That's how I'm like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is what I look at. I'm like, it doesn't make any sense, but this is the logics that they have. So I want to pivot here to spend a few minutes on Russ Vought and then get to Pete Hegseth before because Stephen Miller is insane. We can actually do
if you are listening and you've never seen, he's been a cretin literally his whole life, and there's this video of him. There are so many things, but he went to Santa Monica High School and he gives a speech about why the students shouldn't pick up their own trash because that's what janitors are for. He has a little bit more hair, but not much. That hate has an agent like
takes away those follicles.
Ooh.
So this is the part of the podcast for those of you who are really uber Christian. You might want to just
get petty sometimes.
Hit fast forward, but we got to get a little bit. These people, all of them look so much older than they are.
Russ Vought is only 9 years older than me. He's like 3 or 4 years. How old are you, Carter? He's like 4 years older than you.
He's 3 years older than me. Yeah. I was like, this dude is in his like late 40s. This is crazy.
Not God's favorites, because you can say what you want, but if you look like that, if that's how you're aging, you are not God's favorite.
I don't need to say all that. All I say is hate kills you. Like this is where I think this is what now we know that what's her name? Who wrote Harry Potter?
J.K.
Rowling.
She got problems, but what she does with Voldemort is so brilliant. Because as Voldemort continues to do this harm, he keeps like parts of himself keep dying, and he looks messed up. This is what happened to these people. They keep doing this stuff, and they look more and more messed up. Like because something inside you dies. Like you can't whatever you got going on in your genes that's supposed to protect you. You're eating away at that stuff, man. And and so part of me is like, it's not even like making fun of them. It's like making an observation. Like they do not look good. They look like unhealthy people because they are full of hate. And I'm like, hey, man, if you want to say, Dr. Carr, you shouldn't say they're full of hate. Well, they need to stop saying hateful stuff. That's all I'm saying. Because they saying hateful stuff. That's why I'm saying they full of hate. I ain't gonna say that. You ain't gonna say Dr. Carter's full of hate because I don't be saying nothing crazy like that.
Right. He's like, I look good.
I shaved my gray beard. I shaved it off so you can't tell how old I am.
Not being a hater is good for the skin.
So is lotion. Somebody should tell them about moisturizing
and sunscreen.
Exactly. See, beauty tips from the Progressive Christians podcast. So Russ Vought. Russ Vought is the second shadow president. He is in charge of the Office of Wesley. Help me again.
Management and Budget.
Office of Management and Budget. He has been working in DC for since early 2000s.
30 years, yeah.
Yeah, worked his way up. He was a mailroom clerk for a Texas senator. I want to start with the compassion stuff before we move to the crazy. Both his parents were widows, and that's how they met in their 30s. They each had children. They each had spouses that died, and then they got married. They found each other in their 30s, and they got married. And Russ is the only child of their relationship that they had together. And when he was younger, he had a sister die in a car crash. And it seems as though the convergence of all the death that his family experienced really is what pushed his family towards a kind of more conservative Christianity to try to think through the consequences of these deaths as punishment for not living in alignment with God's teachings. That's what you can see. You see this line of, we have had all this death and people have died because we have done wrong and God is punishing us, so we need to do right. And so you see this kind of conservative theology that's tied to biblicism, right, emerge as a child. His mother started a Christian school, and it stayed with him. And so there's a part of me, the gentle part, that says, Russ, you need to go to therapy. You need to unpack your stuff, and maybe you actually won't be so mean. But I hope it's not too late. I should never say it's too late. But that's the part of me that has some compassion. So hopefully, I don't know if y'all want to say anything about that.
I mean, yes, I think therapy is important and everyone should go. It's wonderful to work through sort of all the things that get thrown at us as a human being. I think learning that his parents started a Christian school, it's hard for me to divorce that from the larger like private Christian school movement in this country that has been, in my estimation, like a racist movement trying to separate white kids from everybody else. Even as we try to create a context where we're more gracious about why he ended up the way he is, it does feel like his parents started early. They had ideas about who should be included, who should not be included, about, wanting children to be raised in Christian schools and not in public schools for a whole host of reasons. And so I guess I appreciate the attempt at softening, but it's like, to what end? He's creating real harm and real he's creating real harm for everyday people.
Yeah, no, he is. He's the one, actually, I would say, creating the most harm because of his budget policies, which is why I want to make sure we talk about him. So he's the one of, well, he and Pete Hegseth both have explicitly said they're Christian nationalists, right? Like they're like, we are Christian nationalists. I can't shy away from the term because this is who I am. And so he was being interviewed. And so this is an article from ProPublica. He once told an audience that the phrasing of Christian nationalist is too accurate to run away from. I'm a Christian. I'm a nationalist. We were meant to be a Christian nation. And so that's how he sees these things with respect to his role in the government. He's also been one of the architects that has pushed the use of the word woke as a way to divide and conquer, to use that term as a dog whistle to defund anything that is social services, anything that's actually going to really help working class and poor people. He argues that the stark reality in America is that we are in the late stage of a complete Marxist takeover of the country, in which our adversaries already hold the weapons of government apparatus. This is what he said in 2024 during a conference hosted by the Center for Renewing America, a nonprofit think tank that he also founded. And he's arguing that we're Marxists somehow and that we're trying to take away their rights and their money. What he's using right now and why he's able to leverage the government shutdown, for instance, I should just get to that before is he's basically saying that what Congress has, even though Congress is the power of the purse, Congress decides how much money people can spend in appropriations. He's saying that, well, technically what Congress has is the power to determine how much we can spend, but not how little. So I can actually create policies to deny the spending of money. Technically, that's illegal, right? That I want to say there's these two. I don't need to get into the nuances of it. Just trust me. I'm gonna put the articles in the chat, so I'm not lying. You can look in the ProPublica article. It describes in detail, right, how this is illegal, what he's doing. Because that's not the way it was written. It wasn't written to say you can't say there is no, oh, you determine how much money, but we can determine the floor. That's what Congress is for. But because they have conspired with Mike Johnson to keep Congress basically being ineffective, they have created a king. Like, if you go back to the podcast we did on Project 2025, they have implemented about half of that agenda already in 9 months.
Yeah, not even 1 year.
That's crazy. They are undoing research. Like, that's what I was talking. So his daughter has cystic fibrosis. He's defunded research that directly contributes to them finding cures for his own kid. Like, I'm like, this is like, that's crazy.
He has 2 daughters and an ex-wife. And I've observed that these kinds of people, misogyny often goes along with it. And so that might be shocking to you, but it's not shocking to me at all. He's also the one that the president, that one, I know he's been throwing up a lot of these weird AI videos, but the one.
Oh, the Grim Reaper?
He's the Grim Reaper.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a Reaper. It's messed up. And I think, so what the ProPublica article that we're going to include, the long one, basically makes the argument that by the end of Trump's first presidency, Vought feels like he had finally figured out how to use and weaponize the OMB to actually do the work that Trump wanted to do, to actually give him the power to dismantle the bureaucratic state. The crazy thing is they critique bureaucrats when they're bureaucrats.
100%.
Like they are unelected bureaucrats. So you have Stephen Miller and Russ Vought critiquing unelected bureaucrats when, like, that's what you are.
Yep,
like, you are not elected. No one voted for them, right? And so in the way I should say this before I forget, the way that Vought argues this is Christian is what he says is that the church and Christian people ought to be providing these services rather than the state, right? He's like, Jesus doesn't mandate that the state provide these services. But the problem with that is Jesus is not talking about state structure at all. Jesus is speaking from the position of a oppressed Jew in a Roman apparatus. So he's not saying, hey, in 2,000 years, when we get power, you need to do this. Jesus is trying to tell his people how to survive. What you could do is actually, if they want to actually be biblically, technically literate, they could go to the Hebrew Bible when Israel did have a state, quote unquote, and have power. And God did mandate that they take care of the poor, the widowed, the orphan, the immigrant, the stranger. Like, God actually told y'all to do it. And then you didn't do it and you got captured, right? First by Assyria, then by Babylon. I'm like, so this is what I don't understand. I'm like, now the Hebrew Bible tells you to do this stuff. Like, oh no, that's not what Jesus say. But then when I say what Jesus said, the Hebrew Bible says this. I'm like, come on, man. Like,
it's so disingenuous. It's crazy.
Oh, it drives me wild.
Just because I just threw it through the Google, and it doesn't seem as though Russ Vought is overly involved in any charities, for the record.
Not that I can see, not that I can find.
Not that I can find. He is involved, obviously, in the Heritage Foundation and these think tanks, but insofar as like caring for the poor, it doesn't seem as though he
Because it's not about caring about the poor.
Well, I know it's not, but I'm saying, like, if his whole thing is like, well, the church should be doing this, then
you would hope to see a track record of that reality. Yeah.
Surprise, surprise.
Doesn't exist. Well, we are going to pause because Wesley has to go. Unfortunately, Wesley has a heart out. So we're going to talk about Pete Hegseth without him. And Julia's going to hold it down because he's a misogynist. So she's super excited.
Terrible human being. Belonging to a terrible collection of churches is all I'll say.
I know. We should actually have Blair talk about that collection, that stuff too, because that's more Blair's specialty than ours.
We should definitely.
So we can, do that because I know you have a lot to say about that. So Wesley, thanks for being able to hop in for an hour, and we'll see you later. What we decided to do, actually, as we were kind of having a brief break, is we are going to turn this episode into a 3-part series because there is too much for us to cover. I was like, we could do this in an hour. This is what happens when you have ADHD, is you feel like you can do more in the little bit of time you have. And I'm like, we actually can't really do justice. I don't even know that we did justice to Stephen Miller even, because there's so much more we could say about how evil he is. So next week's episode is going to be on Pete Hegseth and the Communion of Reformed Evangelical Churches, or CREC. This is the conservative Christian nationalist group that Pete Hegseth is involved with. Is associated with Doug Wilson, the pastor of
one of the worst
in Moscow, Idaho. Yeah, he was just on CNN, so we're going to talk about him. And then in the third episode, we're going to talk about what we can do to resist it, because even that takes more time than I think I was just going to read some things, but we need to actually tease out what that resistance looks like, because it's really coalition building and community building. But I did want to say one more thing about Russ Vought, because he has this notion of biblical citizenship that is just insane. And so I wrote it out because I want to make sure I get it right, because I was like, this is creepy. Dude's like, I've never heard of the term biblical citizenship, but this man created it. So basically, Vought, the reason he wanted to be in specifically in the office of budget is because he felt like controlling the purse strings would give him particular kind of power to blackmail people into following what the president wants to do. And so his thinking is very much in line with the kind of thinking that the unitary executive theory, which is what the Project 2025 argues, is that the president actually is like a king. And so we need to be ideologically loyal to the president in order to get the president's agenda across. And in so doing, we could actually do more. The government would be more effective. He feels the government's ineffective because it's full of bureaucrats, if you will. And so for him, his plan was to systematically strip service protections, like civil service protections, I should say, from across the board, so that whoever the Republican president is, and his belief is there'll be another Republican president after Trump, can basically fill every single level of government with ideological loyalists. And so we're talking about replacing career professionals with people handpicked for their political and religious alignment, not for their qualifications for the job. So Vought calls this vision biblical citizenship. That's literally what he calls it. This is biblical citizenship. Are you committed to the cause of what the Bible says, and the way in which you're supposed to support the leader and the quote unquote king? This is not what the actual founders of our country believed in. The actual things about our founders is they would have saw this as patronage, right? They see what Trump is doing now as a kind of patronage. And patronage is like quid pro quo. You do this for me, I do this for you. This is what's happening with Argentina. Yeah, this is what's happening with Argentina, where Argentina is like conservative, and they're like, oh my gosh, our economy is about to collapse, but we support you, President Trump. Can you let us borrow some money? He's like, sure, because they can't quid pro quo. But as other countries like Colombia, where they're blowing up Colombians, and but they're a left-leaning country. He's like, well, if you say this is illegal, I'm gonna withdraw aid and charge you more tariffs. Like, that tells you right there the tariffs aren't about economy, they're about his political power, right? And so this is corruption. This is blatant corruption. There is no accountability in this system. It's basically, Russ Vought is creating a system that is about loyalty rather than about accountability, right? It's about wanting authority without wanting accountability. He's trying to ensure that government functions not based on expertise or public service, but on loyalty to a specific religiously infected political agenda. Like, that is what he is trying to do. And that is why it is so incredibly dangerous. And why I wanted to bring him up, because I'm like, y'all need to know who this man is because he's doing so much harm. He's doing so much harm. Julie, is there anything you want to say about what we have talked about today before we wrap up?
I mean, no, I hate it so much. I cannot put into words how sick I am of having to think about these awful people. Like, I'm so sick of having to like living in the same timeline as them isn't bad enough. I also have to think about them all the time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, oh God.
No,
and
I mean,
all because they're pathetic. Like, all of this because they're pathetic. You know, because they lack self-love and self-worth, and they don't believe that God will really love that. They're trying to prove something to someone. Like, all of this just because they're pathetic. And I like,
it is like, I woke up thinking about this podcast and thinking about what we're gonna say and how I was gonna frame it, and how I was gonna set it up, and trying to. It's frustrating that they do occupy so much of our time, and like, you know, even the No Kings March in protest, which, to be clear, there are some. I shouldn't say it's fine. I think gathering, protesting is good. I wish they were making a. They wish they had to ask. I have some critique. It's a safe way to protest, but it is a way to gather momentum and energy around resisting, but it's increasingly become an authoritarian fascist regime. Like, obviously so. And so in that sense, I think it's good to show people that we can gather, we can resist, and it can be peaceful. At the same time, we need to start demanding accountability from our Congress. The demand right now needs to be Congress needs to get into session and actually hold the president accountable and spend the money that's been appropriated to pass this budget. And
well, he just said that he's going to sue the government for $250 million personally, which is he's going to get. I think was it last week that you talked about authority without accountability, or was it the week before?
No, that was the. If you're wondering, they were referring to my sermon that I just did on Sunday. Yeah, they want accountability. They want authority without accountability.
And I do think that Donald Trump's weaponizing of the federal government right now against his political enemies is fascist, yes, but it also is in response to a weak attempt to hold him accountable in the past.
Yeah.
People really just didn't put their hearts into it. I'm sorry, they didn't.
They didn't.
Merrick Garland should have held him accountable.
Yep.
I think accountability is the key word. I do.
I agree. And I think we're here because Merrick Garland felt like Trump
wouldn't
win. Not just
Merrick Garland. Many people
many people felt like Trump wasn't going to win. They felt like, you know, the one senator who keeps falling. I know you were joking. You said
Mitch McConnell.
Mitch McConnell. Like, people are like.
Keeps reaching up just to tease him. Grabbing him by the ankles. About like, you coming soon.
Now that's a joke because we wouldn't even believe in hell. Just so y'all know, we're just making a joke. We don't believe in hell.
These people do make me wish that I did, but unfortunately I don't.
We don't. I know.
And also, if I did, I'm more of a universalist, and I don't think that God would even send even Mitch McConnell to hell. It's unfortunate for me. These are the things that I sit with.
I think that, like, it is this belief that people are going to uphold norms. That means you don't have to hold them accountable. And I think, again, this is how you fall victim to the lure of the lies of white Christian nationalism. You believe you believe in these principles and morals and values without actually understanding the long line of where they take you to. And by that I mean, if you play it out, it ends up harming all of us. It doesn't protect anybody. So we are going to, again, it's going to be a 3-episode series because we need to get more into unpacking the lies. We didn't get a chance to talk about that. I have a whole bunch of notes on the lies. I have a bunch of notes more on Pete Hegseth. And then we're going to talk about the last episode of what we can do to resist it. So thank you.
And we should talk about Christian nationalism. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. We should talk about it again because we talked about it on our former podcast. And we had a series. And we were talking about it as it was becoming a thing, but now it is a thing and we're doing it. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
So good times.
Good times.
Having fun yet?
Are you having fun? That's why you left. That's why you left us. Well, I want to thank you for joining us for the Progressive Christians podcast. The Progressive Christian podcast is a ministry of the Loft, the worship community of Westwood United Methodist Church, out here in beautiful Los Angeles, California. If you'd like to connect with us and be a part of the conversation, you can find us on all social media platforms at The Progressive Christians. Our show is edited and mixed by our wonderful audio engineer, AJ. Again, I want to invite you to please rate, review, share, and subscribe to our show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. Please continue to leave comments, continue to post, continue to read, whatever. All that stuff helps with the algorithm. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.